Right now I'm standing in an extremely interesting place. I am on the southern side of the Galilee. I'm here in Tiberias. I'm at an extremely old grave site, extremely creepy grave site, but it's really not. I'm going to tell you why. Here in Tiberias, at this old ancient graveyard, it's actually one of the oldest grave sites in Israel, besides the Mount of Olives. It was built by King Herod the Great's son, Antipas, maybe around 17 BC. He built this graveyard here on top of a graveside from the Jewish people, and so Jewish people wouldn't visit the gravesite because he built this Roman city. He thought he was going to show everyone this great city right here on the seashore facing the beautiful Sea of Galilee, but the Jewish people wouldn't visit it. So what's interesting is that the history of this, back at that time, they thought that this grave site, that the Jewish people would be resurrected. Actually, the Talmud says that the Jewish people would be resurrected from this grave site, which is only Jewish people buried here 40 years before the Messiah would come. Why did they think that? Because this graveyard is the lowest graveyard in Israel, besides the Mount of Olives, because they believe also that the Mount of Olives, the people will be raised first in the resurrection. They'll be the first people raised. So they thought here would be, before that, they thought the people would die underneath the graves, and they would go to the Mount of Olives and join their people when they were resurrected. But after he built the city here, they wouldn't even come here anymore until Rabbi Shimon came. Rabbi Shimon came and he did the hot springs because he had all these ailments, these skin, probably like sores, but he came to the hot springs and he got healed. So the Jewish people returned once again to Tiberias. Something that's interesting about this is that the graveyards, they have discovered actual tombs from the time of 17 BC. The writing on them are as original Hebrew writing. Up to just maybe today, there's a new graveyard here. Some of the ancient rabbis are buried here in Tiberias because this is actually such a holy place, and you can see they're lit up. The tradition of Jewish people, when someone dies, is that they bury him immediately. They're not waiting a couple days to be buried like we do as Westerners. They bury him immediately. They're buried in the ground. And you're saying, well, why do I see all these monuments? Because that's basically what they are. They're just monuments to the person. As you can see in the ancient tradition, and even some today, they have a flickering of a light or a candle. That's to represent the spirit of a person flickering, still flickering. Also, what's interesting is Jewish people back in the first century used to believe that the soul, after the person died, for 3 days, the spirit would hover over the body, which makes you remember the time that Lazarus died, and Mary came to get Jesus up in the Galilee, and he finally came on the day 4, and they were crying and very upset that Lazarus had waited 4 days, that Jesus waited 4 days to rise Lazarus. And because I think the reason why Jesus did wait is because I think if he had waited and done it before the 3rd day, they would have said, well, he was already there, he wasn't really dead. And I think that's why Jesus waited till the 4th day, to show him that he was God. But what's interesting, these flickering of lights, is that the Jewish people wait a whole year. They grieve. When they're first buried here, people will stay here at the graves. There's always someone here for the 3 days, keeping an eye, making sure the person doesn't resurrect or the soul doesn't escape. They're buried in the ground, and on the year anniversary, everyone comes together and celebrates the death of that person. If you see on these grave sites, there's rocks. Jewish people do not believe in flowers because flowers die. But in memory and in memorial, you will bring a rock and lay it on here. Some people have hundreds of rocks, some might not have any. But it's like depending on the family, how many family members are still left, because every year they come and place a rock. So you can imagine if some of these tombstones are just a day old, they're going to have hundreds of rocks, to where if they're 1,000 years old, they're not going to have anybody because none of their descendants are still here. I'd like to take you through this graveyard, not only to see the ancient headstones that are written out of marble from the Roman pillars that they've scrolled ancient Hebrew on, but I'd like for you to look at the brand new graveyards and see how ornate and how detailed they are. They're absolutely beautiful. Tonight's a nice quiet night. It's cool here in Tiberias, but I want you to enjoy the graveyard. Come with me. something kind of fascinating is the story where Jesus was walking on water and the disciples all got scared. They actually says it got fearful. I'll tell you why. Because in Tiberias, the story or the mystery of this graveyard and the fact that the city was built on top of it and it was mystical is that people believed, all the fishermen believed at the time, that they would see ghosts on the water during the night. Because here in the Galilee, the fishermen fished at night. They would hold a candle over the side of the boat so the fish would be drawn to it and they would catch all the fish. But so here the fishermen, the disciples, are out on the water and they see Jesus walking on water. That's why they were fearful, because they thought it was a ghost or a spirit from this graveyard. The graveyard that feeds right into the Sea of Galilee. That's why they thought it was a ghost, because they thought Jesus was a ghost until they realized it was Jesus. But that's a really important part. Every detail of the Bible is super important. And being here, you can visualize that story right here. You know what? It's 100% chance we're all going to die one day. But where you're going to spend eternity is what matters. Either you're going to spend it with the Lord or somewhere else. In John 11:25, Jesus himself says, I'm the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, even though he dies, will live. I hope everybody that's watching this video will choose correctly and live with Christ in heaven, because death is imminent and we're all going to die. So many blessings to you.